In this tutorial, we will look extensively at part of the software called the component tree. This is shown on the left-hand side of the screen in the Modeling tab of both vcarve and Aspire. It is a very important area of the software if you plan to work with 3D objects, as it allows you to control and organize them and dictates exactly what you see in the 3D view. This in turn will dictate what you machine when calculating the 3D toolpaths. The component tree in vcarve and Aspire is essentially the same, so we are going to work with the vcarve software for this presentation. Towards the end, we will look at some of the options that are unique to Aspire, so you have everything you need to know about the component tree both in Aspire and vcarve. Well, we're going to start by creating a new part. So from the menu, we'll select File, New, and it's going to be a single-sided part. The job size is going to be 12 inches in width, 12 in height, 3/4 of an inch thick. Our Z0 will be from the material surface. Our XY datum will be in the lower left hand corner. We'll select the middle high for the modeling resolution and OK. Now that we've created a new part, let's go down and take a look at the modeling tab. Now from within vcarve we have a limited number of modeling functions, and this is far increased with the Aspire software. Below that we have the component tree, and we already have one item in that component tree, which is a level. Now this level is not a 3D component, but is the tool in which we can manage our data. So essentially the component tree will be managed by using levels, groups and components to create a tree structure and our resultant composite model that will be machined at the end. Now in vcarve we can import Clipart into this component tree, whereas in Aspire we have the ability to not only import that data but to create 3D items from both vectors and bitmaps. So with that, let's go down and start introducing models into our job space. So from the bottom now, I'll select the Clipart menu, and we have a series of folders here containing our Clipart. In particular, we're going to take this apple here that we have and bring this into the 3D view. So as I double click now, it will then appear in the center of my 2D view. And now this is a good time for me to flip to showing both not just the 2D view, but 2D and 3D view. So we have on the left hand side sort of a bitmap representation of the item that's been included into our job space. We can see that it's instrumented as shown with the dots and the blue corners, which allows us to stretch, move and rotate this item from within the 2D view, and we can do the same in the 3D view. So if I move in the 2D view, you can see it moves in the 3D view, and likewise if I move in the 3D view, it shows us moving in the 2D. We have the ability in the 3D view to manipulate and rotate the model, and we can see the modeling plane there that is permanently there to help us visualize our 3D model in space. Okay, so in this case we have one component that's been added. If we go back now to our modeling tab, we can see our component tree there, where level 1 now has one item that has been added to it, which is the single apple model we see on the screen. Okay, so with that we can now come back and add in another model. So we're going to come back to the Clipart now, and in this case I'm going to add the same apple into this job space. So once again, double click on that item, that will appear on the screen. If I just move that there, we can see those two items together. As you can see, it's the latter one that is instrumented. If I come now down to the modeling tab, you will see the level now has two items. Those items are shown separately, the two apples, and the most recent model to be added appears at the top of the tree. Okay, now I have the ability to switch off single items together or switch them back on, and similarly I can switch them off together by manipulating the level. So if I switch that off now, you can see the models disappear, and if I switch them back on, they will reappear. As well as the ability to control the display of the individual components and level, we also have the ability to minimize its display within the component tree. So next to the visibility icon is this little minus sign here, and if I click on that, it will just minimize the display of the components within the modeling tree, the component tree here, but still protects the visibility in both the 2D and 3D view. And similarly, I can re-expand to re-show those items in the component tree. It may be that you have many levels, each with many different groups and components, and the ability to minimize the individual level allows you to find a much easier way to work. So we've got it re-expanded here. We can see obviously the visibility is on. We also have an icon and the name. With the left mouse key, if we hover over the icon, we'll get information about how it's merging with other models, its base height and the current height for that particular model. So we can see here that the total height is 0.315, its combined mode is merge, and its base height is 0, so it's on the 0 plane. If we move up now to the next model, we can see that we have the same option shown again, and these two items together are merging, and you can see that on the screen where one apple is sort of merging into the other. If we go up to the level here now, you can see there is a different icon here, and that combined mode is set to add. So what you have is this sort of composite model which is made up of the interaction of components, groups and levels, and we'll come to take a closer look at this with a more complex model later on in this presentation. So what else can we do with the left mouse key? Well, of course, if I click on it now, it will highlight it, and if I click on it again, it will allow me to control the name. So if I just click on it, you can see that I can come in now and change its name here. Okay. So as well as controlling things with the left mouse key, let's see what we can do with the right mouse key. So I'm going to right mouse key over either the name or the icon. Okay, and you can see the combined mode is set to merge, and we'll take a look at the add, subtract, lower and multiply at a later stage. We have the ability to copy and duplicate that item. So if I copy now, that copies into the clipboard, and then I would just go up to edit and paste, and that would now show in the tree as a copy of that first item. Okay, going into the component tree just above it, and you can see that it's got a brackets 1 brackets there. Okay, and of course with that, if I wanted to remove it, I can either just select it and then hit delete on the keyboard. Okay, or of course I can right mouse key and delete from the menu there. If I click duplicate, that will do the same as copy, but allow you to actually copy and paste in one go, and you can see that suddenly appears above the previous model, and in this case I will delete that item from the menu. Okay, working our way down, we have the ability to rename that. So in this case I'm going to call this Apple 1, and I'm going to come up and do the same for the second apple that we added, and this one's going to be called Apple 2. Okay, so further down the list we have the ability to show only this, or show all but this. But in this case, if I do show only this, then of course it's switched off Apple 2 and is only showing Apple 1. Okay, and I can go back here and say show all. So it just allows you a little bit more control, especially if you have multiple components, and rather than having to click each one off, you can do this through the menu system by sort of grouping them together and controlling what's displayed. So we can ability to do hide, we can hide this or hide all, and one of the key items here is properties. Okay, now properties is governing how it interacts with individual models, its relationship with the base height, its current shape and form, the size, etc. So we can access it in a number of different ways. So here we've gone right mouse key properties, which will bring up the form. So we can see here that we've got our combine mode set to merge, we've got our shape height currently set here, our base height is on the 0 plane, how it's been tilted, etc. So there's great control here. If I close down that, we can do the same by double clicking on it, okay, which will bring up the same menu. Or alternatively, I can, with it selected in the menu here in the component tree, I can come up to select the sort of spanner at the top, and that will open the same component properties. And the final way of doing that is to actually, once it's selected on the screen, you can just come over to the 3D view and click on the little blue square at the bottom, and that will give you like a mini set of data of what we saw from the properties when controlled from the left hand menu. Okay, so the properties is a very key aspect of controlling the shape and how it interacts with other models. And then finally, the ability to move it to various different levels at the bottom. In this case, we only have one level and we haven't created any more as yet. As well as controlling the individual components within a level, we can come up and have some level of control over the level itself. So with the right mouse key over the name or the icon, we have our own menu here. We've got the combine mode, which is currently set to add. This is how this particular level may be interacting with other levels or we may have within the component tree. We have the mirror mode function, which allows you to explore lots and lots of different design ideas without making duplicate items within that level. We have underneath the ability to show and hide, similar to that we had with individual components. So we've got show this if we're trying to switch it back on. We've got show only this if we want to show just this and switch everything else off. Show all the items but this, so that would be to show all the items in the tree but switch the current one off, or to show all of them. And similarly with hide, we can hide just this or hide, of course, all the items within that level. We have the ability to select the components. So if we've got a number of different levels combining together, it may be difficult to select the items, and being able to come into the level and select all those components from within that level could be a far easier way to pick the models. We've got the ability to insert a new level and of course rename the level. So let's deal with rename first. So in this case, we've got apples, would be a very convenient name to give this one. And of course I can right mouse key and insert a new level, which happens to go in above this item. So the newer item goes in higher up the tree. And of course I can either delete this off the keyboard or right mouse key delete level. So here we've sort of explored all the different options of the basic component tree, so it gives us a good understanding. And the next stage now is really to open an existing model that has many components and levels in and get a better understanding of how it's pieced together. Okay, so let's close this part down now and we won't keep the changes, and we're going to open a example file from the project tree, which is the crest example.crv file that comes with this project. And in this case we've got the 2D view here, and I'm just going to tile this vertically so we can see the 2D and the 3D view together. And as you can see that we've got this beautiful finished 3D part in the 3D view. And if we come back down now to the modeling tab, we can see that we have not one level and two components that we had with the previous, but we've actually got 3 levels here with 9 components being shared over those 3 levels. Now the finished model we see on the right hand side will be created as a result of the way the component tree has been pieced together. So what we have is these 3 levels, each with different components within them, and the way that the software calculates the finished model is to take a look at each of the individual levels as sort of mini sub-assemblies and work out what the result of that sub-assembly will look like. Okay, so in the case we've got what's under level 1 and what's under level 2, how each of these components combine together. So we're looking at how, for instance, the 3 feathers combines with the crown and the fleur to give a result that will end up being what level 2 represents. Okay, and then you have those 3 levels, in this case level 1, level 2 and level 3, and it's how they piece together, bearing in mind that we're starting with level 1, and it's how level 1 pieces together with level 2, and how the result of that then pieces together with level 3. And the net effect of that will be what is displayed in the 3D view. In order to understand how we've arrived at this beautiful 3D model, we need to go and take a closer look at the individual components and levels and how they blend together. So let's go across now, and I'm going to start by switching off all the components and taking a look at what's on each individual level. So we switch everything off, hence nothing on the screen, and we're going to come back and look at level 1, and level 1 is just the shield. We switch that off and we look at level 2, and we can see there are 5 different components there forming the sort of main part of the crown. And then of course you then have level 3, which has the sort of banner with the flourishes. Okay, so let's go down now and switch on level 2, which has 5 different components on, and I'm just going to show the one item here, which is the 3 feathers. So if I show just this, show only this here, we've just got that one item on the screen. And now I'm going to come back on and switch on the crown. Okay, so as I switch that on now, we can see that we have these 2 components on the screen, and they are being blended together based upon the combine mode of the crown. Okay, so the way the crown is interacting with the 3 feathers is giving the result that we see on the screen. You can see from the 2D view that the feathers do interact, they overlap with the crown to give the 3D result we can see here. So if we zoom in, you can see that we have a green area being displayed, which is part of the feathers that we cannot see. So it's showing a hidden part of the feathers that happens to be behind the crown. Now this is because the crown combine mode has been set to merge. Okay, you can see that with combine mode has been merged here, and also by the icon as shown. And the net effect is we are taking the highest value combination of those 2 models. So which, if the crown is higher, then the crown is being shown. If the leaf is higher in that position, then the leaf is, or sorry, the feather is being shown. So that's how these 2 items are being pieced together. The crown is being merged rather than added to the feathers. And if we take a look at what adding would do and how it would affect the model, so I'm going to come up to crown now and change the combine mode to add. Okay, and we can immediately see that the feathers have now been added on top of the crown, or rather the crown has been added on top of the feathers. You've got to remember it's the sequence of events moving up the tree, so it's how the crown is interacting with the feathers. So I'm going to change this now. You can see the icons changed in the menu, and I'm going to put that back to being merge, and we should get now the desired result, because essentially what we want to do is to keep the highest value where the 2 interact. In this case it's the crown with the feathers neatly hiding underneath. Okay, so if we switch on the other 3 now, we can see all those items displayed for that level 2. Okay, so let's double click to deselect and just rotate this to see the desired effect, and you can see that all the items are merging together. So clearly you can see the large fleur-de-lis that we have in the middle there, its height is above that of the crown. So the items below that tree are merging in to that fleur there. That fleur happens to be the highest point, so that is why it appears above the crown. Okay, so that shows the sub-assembly combination which forms level 2. So I'm going to switch off level 2 from the menu here, and we are going to switch on level 3. Okay, we can see all those items there, and actually I'm just going to show only this for the banner. We can see that there now. You can see it's quite deep, and that represents the base point there. And what we want to do is to understand really how it interacts with the other 2 items on that level. So I'm going to switch on the 2 other flourishes, and we can see that the base of them disappears underneath the banner here, because the banner is much deeper, and because the combine mode of the flourishes is set to merge. Okay, and that means that the highest value is being kept, and in this case the banner is the highest value, so that's the bit we see, and in essence the flourishes are just sort of disappearing behind that banner. Okay, so we've taken a look at the individual levels, but now we need to take a look really how the sort of three sub-assemblies piece together. So let's just change the view back, and now we're going to switch off all the components and just start by switching on level 1, which is just the shield. Okay, so at this point this is level 1, it's just got one item which is the shield, and now we're going to look at the interaction of level 2 with level 1. Now level 2 is set to add, so the combination of all the items on level 2 will now be added on to level 1. So if we switch that on now, we can see the combination of that. So the shield and the fleur-de-lis have all been added onto the top of the shield to give this effect that we see on the screen. Okay, so now moving up to level 3. Now level 3, if we remember, was the banner and the 2 flourishes. Okay, and as you can see here, the icon at the top does not represent add, but of course the combine mode is merge. So essentially, rather than the banner sort of wrapping over the top, it's going to take really what is the maximum height and keep that as what is visible on the screen. So with that, I'm going to display level 3 now, and clearly you can see, because of the nature and the depth of that banner actually sits above the panel there, above the shield, therefore that's sitting proud, ready maybe to have some text written on it. Okay, so we can see that because of the depth of that banner, when we set to merge, essentially the banner is above the shield rather than the shield being above the banner. And of course we've got a nice smooth effect here shown by the merge. Now if I happen to change this to be add, you'll see that's quite a different effect now. Okay, so you can see that the flourish and the banner are being added on top. Okay, so that's not the effect we were looking for. We wanted level 3 to be merged in with the combination of level 2 being added to level 1. So I'm just going to go back now and put that back to merge, which is how it should be. So okay, we've looked really at the effect here of the individual components and the sub-assembly they create for the level, and then how those levels interact. And what's very important is, of course, the ordering. Now, if we happen to change the order of the levels, this will also have a big effect on the resultant model. So with this, I'm actually going to take level 1 now and simply move it up above level 3. Okay, so what have we done there? Essentially, level 2 will be done first, then level 3 will be merged with level 2, and then level 1 will be added on to that combination. So this is the effect that we have on the screen. Okay, so the ordering of those levels and the combine mode play a big effect on the resultant model. So now if we take level 1 now and just move that back down, we just move it down and just drop it below level 2, and then that will happen to fit below at the bottom there, and you can see that we've got back to having the result that we wanted. The one thing we haven't dealt with yet is how to take a number of the single components and to combine them into a new grouped entity. So if we take a look at the component tree, and we have level 2, and we have a flat structure now of currently 5 individual components. I'm going to select the bottom one here and then shift on the keyboard and pick the top one, which sort of group selects those items you can see in the tree, and you can see that in the 2D view and in the 3D view as shown as red. I'm going to right mouse key now over the top of any one of those items and say group. Okay, you can see that a new entity called a group has been created, but beneath that you still have the individual components. They can be individually modified, both in terms of their shape and how they interact with each other, combining up as a sub-assembly to form the group. So I'm just going to collapse that now and then just rename that. So I'm going to rename that as decoration. And we can see that that has made the component tree look a lot simpler. And it may be in larger projects that you have a number of groups. So in essence, you have the set of components as a sub-assembly to create the group. You then have the groups interacting together to form the level, and then you have the levels interacting together to form the final model. Okay, so that gives you certainly an idea of all the features available in vcarve, both Pro and Desktop. Now there are a number of unique features with Aspire. So what we're going to do is we're going to open a new session of Aspire and load in the same file and look at the new features. So with that, I'm just going to pop open the software now and go and grab the same example file, which is this Crest project, and tile the windows vertically so we can see the 2D and the 3D view. So at this point, everything seems very similar, but if you come down to the modeling tab now, you can see that we have a vastly increased number of features. The lower rung of the modeling tools here are what is available in vcarve, so things like the properties, being able to smooth the model, being able to slice the model. These are sort of simple model editing functions, but you lack the ability to create new features either from vectors or images that we have within Aspire. The component tree is a little bit further down on the left hand pane due to the additional functions in Aspire, and one of the key features or key differences between the two is the ability to create new components and then output them as 3D clipart for use in later projects. So with any one of these entities, I can right mouse key now and say export as 3D clipart, and that will pop open a form now and allow me to save that for use in a later project. So essentially I can create my own sort of 3D clipart library. So I can do that from an individual model, or I can go up to a level and do the same. So export as 3D clipart, and that will be saved as a single file, but when I import it, that will come in as an entity that can be expanded to the individual items beneath. So that certainly shows just some of the differences between Aspire and vcarve. There are many similarities, but of course Aspire, the key differences are the ability to create your own components from vectors or bitmaps, and the ability to export those items as 3D clipart for use in later projects.